So for the first full week of 2025, I did not read a single book. To normal people, that probably doesn't sound like a big deal, but to someone like me who runs a channel based around reading and who normally reads 150 plus books a year, this was a really, really big deal. So I wasn't actually sure if this was something I was going to make a video on, but the more I've sat with it, the more I've kind of realized that I think there's something important here that I want to dig out and I want to share with you guys. So what happened was, going into the new year, the last day of the year, I had finished all my books that I was reading that year, and I wasn't going to start anything on the 31st. I was just going to do my normal yearly planning and all this. And instead, what I kind of realized was just man, I am just not in a good place. My soul is really just tired and worn out, and I just don't feel good. And that kind of led on to the first couple of days and all the way up into the first week of this new year. And what I ended up doing, instead of normally in the mornings, I'll spend 2 hours reading. And basically for 5 days of the first week, all I did was catch up on the TV series Yellowstone. I hadn't seen the first half of season 5. And so I was binge watching TV, which for me is just not a normal thing, right? Especially not in the mornings. And so I would wake up in the mornings for my normal quiet time. I would read a little bit of my Bible, and then I would either just sit there, just in the silence, drinking my coffee, or I would watch some of Yellowstone. And what came out of that at the end of it was actually way more than what I really even recognized was happening at the moment. And the two ideas that I want to take out of this is this idea of the foundation of everything was that my soul going into this new year was really hurting and just tired and worn out and just done. And one of the things that can happen when you take something, especially like reading, but any kind of habit that we get into that is a helpful and a generally good habit to be in, right? So an easy one is reading. Another really easy one is working out, right? Taking care of your body physically, right? Reading is taking care of your mind, of yourself mentally. Working out is taking care of yourself physically. And what we can do when we build a habit of this helpful thing, we can actually be so ingrained in the habit of it that we can use it as a avoidance technique to ignore what's really going on deeper inside of us. And that's what I kind of subconsciously was realizing at the beginning of the year is man, if I just go on with my normal reading in the mornings and I just delve into all these books and I just keep going like I normally do, I'm not going to be using it to better myself and to glean the things out of these books that I'm supposed to. I'm going to be using it as an avoidance technique from dealing with something that's going on in my heart and in my soul, right? It's super easy for us to recognize that we're avoiding doing the hard soul work that we need to when it's something bad, right? If it's I woke up every morning and I was, drinking scotch at 6 a.m., it's well, obviously something's kind of messed up in me. But it's more difficult to recognize it when it's a good thing and something that is normally a good thing. But I want to encourage you with this. If you're going into the new year and deep down you recognize something like that, my soul is trying to tell me something, is trying to get at something that's not right, that needs to be dealt with, pay special attention to the habits that you have that are normally healthy, because those are the things that you're going to want to just grasp onto to avoid doing that deep soul work. And so that's kind of just the first idea is if your soul is not okay going into the new year, pay attention to these healthy habits that you normally have and don't use them as an avoidance technique. The other thing in this story for me was I was doing it to catch up on the show Yellowstone. And part of it is just because I love the show Yellowstone, but also part of it is that Yellowstone was speaking to something super deeply inside of me. And it wasn't speaking directly to the pain that I was dealing with, but it was speaking to it kind of indirectly. And in watching the show and in kind of letting myself feel what was coming up out of me because of what I was watching in the show, I was able to eventually get down to the actual source of that pain and be this is what's going on in my soul. This is why my soul is so tired. This is why my soul feels so weary. This is what my soul is longing for. And the the thing that was just fascinating about it, looking back on it now, is that a lot of times when we have these like soul pains like this, we can't approach them directly, right? And I had this vision of like standing on the train tracks, right? And you've got this train of pain coming down at you. And if you just stand there and you try to like face it, you're just going to get crushed, right? It's too much. And that's what it was for me. Like how I was doing was just too much for me. But if you step to the side a little bit and you approach it from the side, then as the train is passing you, you can kind of grab onto a rail and you can hop on, and then you can examine it, and then you can slow it down and you can work through it, right? And that's what happened for me with watching this show. Was it sidestepped enough of what my soul and what my heart were going through for me to be able to get into it and dig down deeper into it and allow God to work through the stuff that I needed to work through in it with this new year. And so, so just going into this new year, just pay attention to how your soul is doing. It's so easy, especially when you have built a habit of doing healthy things, right? Reading, especially if you read the way that I do. Like I don't read crap books, guys. Like, you guys know this. You see the books that I read. Like I'm not over here reading as a distraction and just like, oh, whatever. Like I'm over here doing this to actively make my life better. The same way that, I'm actively working out to make my life better. Like any of these habits that you build, they're so good, but there will almost guaranteed come a time where the good habit is sneakily becoming this avoidance technique for you avoiding the next thing that needs to be dealt with inside of you. And so if you start to feel that, if you start to recognize that, don't be afraid to just let it go, right? It's the freakiest thing in the world. Like I posted, that I read 150 books last year, and somebody was like, oh my gosh, that's like a half a book a day. And I'm like, well, it's not quite, but it's closer than not. And so it's like, literally to not read anything for a whole entire week is like earth-shattering for my normal life routine, right? But don't be afraid to just completely just wreck that routine and do something different in order to deal with the things that are trying to come up, especially at a time like this around the new year, where you have all these new hopes and dreams and old hopes and dreams that need to be dealt with, and all of this. And so, I don't know, no book recommendations in this one, just random thoughts of what's been going on in my life. So I would love to know, how has your new year been? Hopefully it hasn't been as rough as mine. Hopefully it's been as good as mine in some ways. But yeah, let me know how it's been. Let me know how you generally approach the new year. Is it a very exciting thing? I have noticed that in general, my approach to the new year, I kind of have a proclivity towards just not liking big days and things, right? Like the foundational one for me was always Valentine's Day. Whereas like if like you're not going to restore your marriage. Like you're not going to have a good marriage based on having a good Valentine's Day. Like if the only time you put any effort in is on Valentine's Day, you're screwed. So I kind of have a proclivity against like big days, and whatever. But yeah, I would love to hear how your year is starting off. If you've read anything, if you finished anything, I mean, heck, we're 8 days in. Somebody's probably finished something at this point. So if you've been reading something you really like, that you think I would like, let me know. And we're just, we're going into 2025. If you're still here, if you watch videos to the end and you're still here and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It's mostly just vanity metrics, honestly. But it does actually help the algorithm. It helps if you subscribe. It helps if you like. It helps if you comment. And so if you are a consistent watcher, I don't know, words are hard, man. Words are hard. But if you watch these videos consistently, go ahead and do that for me moving forward into the year. I'd love to get these kinds of book recommendations and the kind of stuff that I want to talk about. I've got a lot of ideas of what I want to talk about in 2025. And I would love to get it out to as many people as we can. So help the algorithm out however you can. And Happy New Year.